Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Amin. I work with NMC Healthcare, and I'm currently posted with NMC Specialty Hospital in Rui. I work with the emergency department, and in Oman, we are currently having a outbreak just like everywhere else in the world with coronavirus. A lot of people know this as COVID-19, and a lot of people will call it as SARS-CoV-2. There are different names being given as we go about, learning more things about this virus. And what I've noticed is we're trying to spread the message of what needs to be done for this virus as much as possible. And we need the people of, this country to understand that it is now because present within the country as well, and there are numbers rising every day, that there are certain things that obviously us doctors will know, and we will uh, be learning things through different sources as far as our profession is concerned. We are the front line, and the general practitioner's room and the emergency department are the forerunners of the front line. We are probably seeing a lot many more patients than usual. So we need the general public to understand that there is information that will only be available with a health practitioner because of his background, and there will be information that obviously that the general public needs to know. So people are now flooded with so many messages and flooded with information from all around. Some of it is pretty true, and some of it is absolutely just fabricated. And to differentiate if you are taking your news from Facebook and WhatsApp alone, okay, it's pretty difficult to understand this. If that is your only source of information, then there's a likelihood that you'll have a lot of information which is completely false. So what you need to understand is you need to have an authentic source of information. And once you have that authentic source of information, you can actually spread that kind of word. But if you don't have the authentic source, then I don't think it would help out the general public, which is going through a lot of mass hysteria in other countries as well. A lot of people are having a lot of problems. You must have seen videos with people buying, large quantities of masks and hand sanitizers and so many things. We'll start from the basics and we'll try to catch up on everything. I would love to have your questions as much as you want to ask, as long as you want to ask. I'm right here. Okay. And if you need to see me, obviously, you know where I work now. Okay. So let's start from the very basic and very beginning. Now, this coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, started out in Wuhan. It started in China. It is not something new that we've seen. It is, if you can put it in simple terms, a family that exists, and it has cousins and brothers and sisters and everybody like that. So you've seen this before in another form. It's not exactly the same. It's slightly different, but it's something that we have come across before. I know a lot of people who are living in the Middle East must have heard of the term MERS-CoV. Now, MERS CoV is a coronavirus. It's Middle Eastern respiratory, coronavirus. It's that was existing in camels, and then it got transferred from the camels to humans. So just like other viruses, also known as the zoonotic viruses, which basically exist in animals and are rarely contracted by the humans, when they have a spillover event and they cross over from the animals into the human kingdom, then obviously that is when you have a problem. And this coronavirus is one of those problems. Now, this virus um, basically is called coronavirus because of the appearance it has. Now, obviously, it took us a while to figure out that its appearance is this way. It has these crown-like structures on top of its surface, and therefore this crown-like structure gives it the name corona. Or corona basically means crown. So that's how it started out, and we still are quite unsure of the reservoir we are not sure if the animal from bat to the second reservoir animal is something that we know. Pangolin is something that they talked about, and we're not really sure whether it is something that exists or not. But we know that from the reservoir it went into the humans, and from the humans now it is going from human to human infection. There are a lot of questions people have had, how it spreads, this and that. It does in humans spread through droplet infection, which means that if a person sneezes or coughs and the droplets go into another person's respiratory system, they will contract the virus because the virus travels through those droplets. Just like any other flu or any other droplet infection viruses, this one goes through the same way as well. And once it has contracted it, it has an incubation period of 14 days. What that means is if a person, say for example, contracts the virus on day 0, then the symptoms will most likely appear between 1 and 14 days. From overall what we've seen from the different parts of the world, with all the doctors joining hands, spreading information between each other, and there's quite a rapid spread of information between us. WHO being the center of all of this information, we are able to understand that once it actually spreads through, 10th day is when the symptoms are very severe. There's a thing called a cytokine storm. It's something medical, it's like medical jargon, but let's put it this way, that the patient will be worse on the 10th day. Now, as far as the numbers are concerned, 86% of people will probably not even know that they had the virus, or they will have very mild symptoms and they will probably get better without any intervention. Then comes the point, what about the remaining people? Some of these people will get slightly tougher diseases. Of these people, they will need hospitalization. So what I'm trying to say is 86% of the people that will contract this virus will not require hospitalization. 20% is the hospitalization rate that the WHO mentions on its website. And it is something that, a lot of people have said, why isn't everybody getting hospitalized? Anybody who is coming out from the abroad, travels, is coming out from different places. Why is it that, they're not getting hospitalized? And isn't that a better solution, to isolate them from the rest of the society? You have to understand this virus in a different way. It is a highly contagious virus. It is spreading like wildfire. It is very quick to travel from person to person. And therefore, if you think about it, that if, say, for example, today, a person contracts the virus and tomorrow the number is somewhere between, 35, 40 in a couple of hours, and then so on and so forth in a couple of days, a few thousand people show up. If we try to quarantine everybody in a hospital with mild symptoms, you will have no beds left. You will have very little help left for the people who actually need the admissions. So we are also on a group with Ministry of Health, and they have been really helpful. They have been extremely helpful. The Ministry of Health Oman has gone out of their way to help with the private sector, being one of the partners in fighting this COVID-19 pandemic. And they have given us extremely strict and very, very useful guidelines on how to handle it in the hospitals and what to do during these circumstances. They have spread their awareness and information quite a bit, so that everybody else can be taken care of properly. Now, let's talk about why everybody is asking, is this virus catching on so fast? Is it an airborne infection? I've been asked this question quite a bit. It has been declared airborne for the healthcare workers, but not for the general public. For the general public, it's still a droplet infection, because you're not working in an environment which is heavily loaded when you're taking care of COVID-19 patients. Okay? So obviously for you guys, it's not that much of a problem, but for the people who are working in the healthcare sector, yes, but we have the precautions for it. We have been given something called PPE. It is personal protective equipment that we use when we're looking at patients like this. And there are special rooms. There are special guidelines that the Ministry of Health Oman has given us on how to see this. a patient that comes into the hospital, how to isolate them from the rest of the public, and so that it doesn't spread from patient to patient, because these are viruses that will travel quite fast, so we need to be very sure what we need to do regarding the procedures that have been given to us. They're very strict and they're obviously very helpful. A lot of people had asked me questions about masks. If you notice, a lot of people have bought masks in the general public in mass quantities, whereas the requirement is almost next to nothing for them. But yes, we being the healthcare workers needed a lot more because we're dealing with these patients. Does a mask protect you? The masks that I've seen people wear here are of two different or three different types. Like, you can say that. One of the masks that I've seen is the ones that we normally use in the hospital is a surgical mask. It's a disposable surgical mask. You wear it and then you throw it away after you see a patient. The other is an N95 mask that I've seen a lot of patients wear. That is in the healthcare sector as well. We use it as well. And then there is what you call a cloth mask. I've seen a lot of these people coming into the hospital wearing a mask which is made out of cloth. Now, I want you to do something at home. People who have both of these cloth masks and the surgical mask, light a candle in front of you, and through the cloth mask, just blow. The candle light will go out. But with the surgical mask, which is the disposable one, it will not. There is quite a bit of a barrier. And the N95 mask or the FFP2 mask, it is not going to allow any air to go out at all. So for us, these masks are important and we use them for a certain number of things. When we use a surgical mask, the one that you find in the hospital, it is not to get infected. It is not for that purpose. The purpose for using that mask is that if you have a sickness, then you cannot get other people sick. So people who have a cough, runny nose, or fever, or all of these things, they should be the ones wearing a mask. And that obviously the hospital usually ends up giving to them once they enter the hospital setup. But people who are not sick, okay, who are normal, for them it will hold no particular benefit. The N95 mask is for people who are going to be dealing with these patients who are diagnosed with COVID-19 directly. So let's suppose I have a patient who is being suspected of coronavirus. I will use that mask to prevent that disease to get to me, because I will be doing invasive procedures. I will probably be checking his throat. I will be making him say, I'll have a close contact. So the risk of me getting the virus is a lot more. So obviously I will wear that mask to prevent that from happening. But that's not the only thing I'll be wearing. I'll be wearing gloves. I'll be wearing a gown that covers me up so that there is no contamination of my clothes or my skin surfaces. Okay, so obviously we need to protect, and that's why it will not get to me. For the general public, you wear a mask only if you're in a direct or a close contact with a patient. If you're not, then it doesn't really benefit you. Okay. Now, how long does it last on the surfaces? You must have seen posters around the world saying, okay, it lasts on this surface that long, that surface that long, air 3 hours, this. You have to understand this. Yes, just like any other virus, any other pathogen that comes onto a surface will live there for a little while. It will survive there for a little while. And because it will survive there for a little while, the risk of you contracting that virus from that surface does exist. So obviously these surfaces have to be cleaned once we see the patient who is suspected, although not positive. We have not known until we have tested and gotten the lab results that this patient is or is not positive. But regardless, protocol suggests that we decontaminate the surface where the patient was seen. So every single time we have a suspected patient, every single time the hospital cleaners that are specially trained for this, and we've taken the pain of actually training each staff who's our cleaner personally with the healthcare workers, the doctors, the nurses, have made sure the infectious disease department has made sure that every single cleaner that we have in the hospital is trained on how to protect themselves and to protect us in the environment, to prevent the disease from spreading within the area. So ambulances, sitting surfaces, lying down surfaces, high sensitivity areas like where you touch the most, like door handles or doorknobs, they will all be cleaned out by these cleaners every single time a suspected patient comes in. That is a very painstakingly long task, but it is done. It's mandatory, and we need to do this. Okay, so I hope the mask thing is something that you understand now. You don't really need it unless you're in direct contact with the patient. If you're not in direct contact with the patient, then you don't really need it. I'm gonna go to questions. I'm gonna try to read whatever questions I can answer. This session has been there just so that I can actually answer your questions. You must have heard so much about coronavirus by now. What I want to do is I want to actually target the myths and the misconceptions that the people have about these viruses, the general public. I need to make them understand that it is something that they need to not be scared of, but at least be cautious of. Okay, so what treatments are given to patients suffering from COVID-19? Mahle had asked this. Currently, there is a range of treatment available. It is all in the clinical phase right now. In certain countries, in certain genomes of this virus, the treatment is separate. In other countries, it's different. We're still in the trial and error phase, if you can put it that way, trial and error phase of this treatment. Most of the treatment is supportive. Okay, to be very precise about the stepwise manner what Ministry of Health Oman has done for us, I'll tell you that exactly what it has done. Say, for example, I see a coronavirus patient and I have a high and a very strong suspicion because he's had some travel or some other contact with a coronavirus patient, and now he has come into my hospital. I will take him into an area which is separated now from the rest of the emergency and the general practice clinic. Okay? And what I will do there is I will gear up with my personal protective equipment and I will go and examine the patient. If my suspicions are even stronger after the examination, I will fill out a notification form. I will take the relevant PCR test from the nose and the throat. It's called the nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs. It is stored in a special material. It is stored in a special container. It is packed in a special way. There are guidelines for this very precise manner. It's not just another test, okay? People have to be notified what we're sending this for. There's a history process of this patient. All of this is attached, sent to a special lab that has been certified by the Ministry of Health. They will then identify and see if this patient needs to be tested. Obviously, once it is tested and it comes out negative, you're in the clear. But if it comes out positive, the entire family in close contact with this particular patient XYZ will be quarantined alongside them, and they will be tested alongside them as well. And they will be seen if they develop the symptoms. If the patient's symptoms are mild, they will be treated at home. We do not want the hospital system to get flooded with patients that can be treated at home, because when the patients who actually really need help, the really sick ones, will come, then they will have no way of getting to us, because all the beds will be filled by these minor cases which will get better on their own. Okay, so there is a very precise stepwise system in which the patient has been identified, followed, treated, and there is even a guideline of when you want to de-isolate the patient. It's not just a simple thing. It's very precise. You have to be very, well read about this by the Ministry of Health. You have to be up to date on their system, on their information, and they are doing it quite well. We are in touch with them quite well. All right. Somebody else asked the same question. Coronavirus patients, thank you for being online. Do we need a lockdown like India? Oh, this is a very good question. A lot of people are really worried. First of all, let me be very clear about this, and it is coming as a non-biased opinion, okay? Regardless of whatever everybody else's opinion is, this is something that I have observed being directly looking at patients who might or might not have coronavirus or other sicknesses, working in this field for a while. The Ministry of Health Oman has done whatever possibly it could, well advanced in time, much before that it was needed. All the guidelines, all the requests that the public has been asked of following were done much before it could spread into a wildfire. If you look at the overall number of people getting sick, they are even open about the information they're giving regarding these patients. Obviously, the identity of these patients, the areas of these patients will not be disclosed for obviously privacy purposes. Say, for example, you're sick tomorrow. Would you like me to disclose your information to anybody else? Where you live, what your name is, how many family members you have? Obviously, it is something extremely, extremely private, and it is for the benefit of the patient and the people. You have to understand, it is not just for the patient, it's for you as well. You do not need to have that information. It will not benefit you in any way. Okay? Not like disclosing that information, you will find something, beneficial towards you. So obviously, that information obviously remains with the Ministry of Health. They have done many things like closing down the shops, bringing the office working force down to 30%. Now it is up to us. You see, you have to understand, this is not something that the ministry, the government, or the hospital and their healthcare workers can do alone. We need your cooperation. If you think that we're going to do everything on our own and you need to be, forced into something, that's kind of ridiculous. You have to understand, you have to be responsible. You have to be held responsible for these things as well. You are in this fight equally as members of this society, as a civic sense. You need to follow the directives that the Ministry of Health gives you. Not following them is going to cause a problem, not just for you, your family, but for the entire country. So at this point, the lockdown is not necessary from looking at the numbers and looking at the cases, because you have to understand, 3 phases of a country of this disease, if you put it very, very bluntly, are something that exists. Cluster of cases appear, travel related cases appear. You have the between the society, the members of the society, cross transmissions, so intertransmissions between different people interacting. So you have to understand, at this point we're still okay, we're still quite fine. Do we need tougher measures for the people? Maybe for them to understand that this is something that you're not just doing for yourself, you're doing it for everyone. You have to be selfless in this. When the government is actually asking you to isolate yourself, come out only and absolutely when necessary. If you want to go for grocery shopping, only one person goes in and not the entire family. These are all measures that are being taken by the government, by the Ministry of Health. They have asked you. And they have not asked you now. They've asked you weeks in advance. They've asked people to not hold wedding events. They've asked people to not sit at restaurants. They've actually shut down restaurants, and you can only ask for delivery. These are all measures that are being properly governed. All you have to do is cooperate. If you cooperate, it'll help us out as well. Why 14 days? Can't they rule out before that through blood test? Okay, I want you to understand something. There are 7 billion plus people on this planet. Producing 7 billion kits to test everybody is not an easy task. Not financially, but also not physically. Not in the months given, not in the time given. You cannot do that. Mass testing is not a proven method of cutting down the number of people's infections. It doesn't work that way. Mass testing is not something, it's not feasible, and it is not recommended at all. What is recommended is you follow instructions. You follow instructions of staying home, okay? Usually the test will give you a positive result between 7 to 10 days. Okay, on the 7th day, 8th day, it will come out positive. Before that, even if you are somebody who's carrying, it usually doesn't come out positive. And so there's a chance of false positive or false negative. So obviously, we have to wait and test according to the criteria that we have set. Not just because everybody is scared in the society, not everybody needs to be tested. You understand? What are the chances of asymptomatic COVID-19 patients? There was a paper that I read the other day, and there was a town in Italy that had actually locked itself down. And what they found in that was, currently in that particular paper, what I've read is 3% of the patients are asymptomatic carriers. Okay, asymptomatic carriers. So Nishreen, yes, there are people who are. I know why you're asking this question. I know you're asking this question because if they are asymptomatic and you come in contact with them, then how will you know that you've contracted the virus? Nishreen, that is why the government is saying stay home. Because you don't know, I don't know, they don't know who's an asymptomatic carrier and all of this. So therefore, the ideal method for this is social distancing. But a normal cough or cold, slight fever, headache, body ache makes paranoid. Yes, mental health, absolutely. I kind of, Nishin, I do understand that mental health. Coming home every day is difficult. From a place that I've seen, touched, examined patients that might be potentially COVID to back home to my family, puts a lot of pressure. Puts a lot of pressure on me because I don't know if I'm going to bring home a virus and get them sick. But you have to understand, there are a lot of clinics right now which are going online in Oman, in Muscat, for mental health. And during these crises, they're trying to decrease the paranoia and decrease the pressure, mental pressure, and the stress people are going through. And it does help. It does. And the paranoia will not be there if you follow instructions, if you're well read, if you get your information from the right place. I don't think you should be worried. You understand? Will the expat be treated equally in Oman? So Sopi Gambi. It has always been the case. Expats are treated equally in Oman. You have to understand this, something that I fell in love with this country for a reason, that the people are treated not based on their skin color, on their gender, on their religion. The country actually treats everybody equally. The love and the respect everybody has for each other, it's massive. Yes, they are being treated. There are people who are very sick, and if the private healthcare sector is unable to treat a patient who's an expatriate, they have always and even now are taking patients. So rest assured, it's not something that you should worry about. Okay. Is there anything we can do on how to differentiate a common cold flu versus corona? Okay, good question. So Rio Campo Vicino, is there anything we can do on how to differentiate a common cold flu versus corona? You must have seen these charts coming out on WhatsApp, Facebook. It's a jargon of information out on the internet right now. There's so much getting there, but you have to understand, fever is the commonest symptom between all of them. Most of the patients will have that. A lot of patients will have cough, cold, runny nose. Let's suppose they're coronavirus patients. For a minute, let's just imagine that a patient comes to me, he has cough, cold, runny nose, and fever, okay? And he is a patient who's COVID-19. I don't know yet. 86% of these patients will get better on their own. We'll never know. We'll never know. We'll be not testing them, so unless there is an absolute need to, if they fall under a certain criteria, and they will get better on their own. A 14-day later, a 2-day asymptomatic period will render them pretty much non-infective, okay? You don't need to worry about whether you can differentiate a common cold flu versus a corona patient from each other, because that's not our job. Our job, that's the doctor's job. That's my job. I need to do that. You need to just isolate yourself. Social distancing. That's what you need to do. Uh, Thank you, Sana Athar, for your comment. Thank you, Sarah Khan. What about children in age above 60? Oh, okay. So, Sean, what about children? Can they contract coronavirus? And how to improve immunity? Okay. As far as improving our immunity is concerned, the general measures are the same. Okay. You eat healthy, you do a little bit of light exercise, that all does its work. Okay. Your body is pretty clever. Don't underestimate your body. Your body understands how to make antibodies. It understands how to fight against a virus or a foreign invader, and produce enough white cells and take care of itself. Okay. Now, obviously, a lot of people will say there is Ayurvedic treatment, there is natural treatments, there's this, there's that. I will not go into the details of whether it does or does not, okay, increase or decrease immunity. For a 60-year-old or a young child, is immunity something important? Yes, it is important, absolutely. What are vaccines for? We are actually giving vaccines to newborns to increase their immunity. These are our methods, BCG, HPV, polio vaccines, all of these, vaccines that we actually give to the newborns is to create immunity against these diseases that can be fatal in young age. So obviously, those are our methods. Natural methods do exist. We have vitamin E related fruits that can cause this, and then there's different things. At the end of the day, it is not your immunity that matters, okay? You need to understand it's not a valid question, because it doesn't matter if you have a good immunity, okay? You will contract the virus and you will spread it, okay? So you need to stay home, whether you have contracted the virus or not. The immunity plays a role in the complexity of the disease's outcome. So people who are immunosuppressant, people who are on immunosuppressed drugs, transplant patients, HIV patients with these autoimmune diseases, on certain medications that decrease the immunity, these patients will not have sufficient immunity. Okay, they will not have sufficient immunity. Just like every other patient, they might contract the virus as well. However, their outcome is different, you see, because they don't have sufficient immunity and their body is unable to cope with the viral load. The disease will be more complex and then probably fatal. So I hope, Sean, that this answers your question for adults and toddlers. All right. So far, these are the questions that I've come across. Now, what does it mean to have social distancing? A lot of people have a confusion between isolation, social distancing, quarantine, and you need to understand why social distancing is important. One, because you must have read so much about it so far. It's extremely important in not just controlling the disease's spread, but it can actually cure a country's problems. How? Now, let's suppose a patient comes in from an airport and he has a virus. Now, I want you to imagine, close your eyes and imagine this. This patient goes to the passport control, where he gives his passport for a stamp. At this point, the person who's sitting on the passport control desk has contracted it on his hands. That's his first contact. Probably if this is a guy who's old, he might require somebody to carry his luggage. That's number 2. Then let's suppose he takes a cab. That's number 3. Then he comes home. That's number 4 contact. Then he goes to work. Those are number 5 contacts. Now, each one of these contacts that he's gone through from the airport onwards has their own family, colleagues, friends, who they have now spread the disease to, who then have their own contacts, and so on and so forth. So I'll tell you a story. and this is about patient 31. This is something coming out from somewhere I heard, but I'm not sure if this is true or not. But let's, for an instance, imagine that this is. So patient 31 is the identity of the patient, patient 31, who landed in South Korea on day 0, and she had the virus. She had the virus. And then she went home. And then after that, next day, she went to church. Now, this church had 600 people in there. Okay? Then from church, she went to a hotel where there was a buffet lunch, which she had. A couple of days later, there was another gathering at another church. She went there. There was another 600-700 people there. So on and so forth for a few days. And in between this, she had an accident as well, where she was taken to the hospital, and they saw that she had a fever. And at this time, this coronavirus was not on a complete outbreak in South Korea at that time. So they said, maybe we should, keep you and test you out. And she's like, no, I'm fine. I'm doing all right. And so on and so forth. Can you imagine the number of patients she infected in South Korea? Patient 31 alone was responsible, going about her day, her daily business, nothing extraordinary, just everyday thing. She infected 6,500 people. That's 6,500 people by one person. That is a number that is staggeringly high. Now, she alone is responsible for this much. Now, imagine if 100 people have this virus and they don't follow the government's directive of isolating themselves, quarantining themselves, social distancing. Each one of these patients, supposedly, let's cut the number from 6,500 to 5,000. If he is responsible for 5,000 infections, imagine the havoc 100 patients will cause. The number is staggering. It's huge. It's massive. It's not fathomable. It's just something huge. Social distancing and flattening the curve is the only way you fight it here. This is the only thing that you're going to do. You don't know if you're going out for a walk alone and the surface after you are tired you sit down on was sat there, somebody with a coronavirus sat there before. You don't know that, right? That is why only go out when it's absolutely necessary. You will get sick and you will cause sickness to somebody who's old at home. Your mom, your dad, brother, sister, wife, kids. And then they will, if obviously they're not following social distancing and isolation, they're going to cause diseases to others. Just every day, just common everyday thing, just going to the shop, getting some groceries without precautions. The government is really trying to request you and asking you for not just your benefit, but your family and everybody else who's in Oman, their benefit. Stay home, okay? So obviously, social distancing and isolation is really important. What we do is, in social distancing, you try to only go out when absolutely necessary. If it is not necessary, stay home. As it is, the workforce has been cut down to 30% in offices. A lot of offices are now arranging, and obviously some have already arranged in which 70% of the workforce will work from home. 30% will come for the basic things, and others will just follow social distancing. And they have some have even done this. I know somebody who has told me this, that 1 week one person will go and 1 week one person will go. The rest of them will not end up going there. So each department has one person on duty every week, and every week else, other than that, they're just off at home. So obviously, I know you're scared of going to the office because somebody else might be sick and this and that, but these are all measures to contain it. If you will not cause a problem, and they will not cause a problem to you. You understand? Okay. Somebody else, contact tracing. Oh, is there contact tracing done here? Absolutely. Rio, rest assured, everybody in close contact with the patient X who has coronavirus is traced down to the last contact that they have had. Okay, so to rest assured, With everything that the ministry is doing, this is one thing that they're painstakingly doing. It's not easy, and they are doing it. Seems like this virus is airborne rather than just being spread from saliva molecules. She wouldn't have going around coughing and stuff around here. Vase. It is airborne in an area where there is no ventilation, there's no negative pressure, and the virus exists because of multiple patients visiting that area, Vase. In that particular case, it's airborne. In other cases, it's not really airborne. You understand? In other places, it's surfaces, Vase. Surfaces. She must have touched a spoon. She must have touched a fork. She must have had a close contact with, a plate. She must have sat down. She must have used a handkerchief. She went to a hospital. She went to a church nearby. Okay? And one person to the next person to the next person to the next person. So as far as, like, for example, I'll give you an example of the people that are quarantined. If a COVID patient comes from a flight, this is the directive. So 3 people on the right, 3 people on the left, 3 people in the front, 3 people in the back. These are the patient's close contacts, 1.5 meter distances. Okay? These are the patients isolated as soon as somebody tests positive in a flight. Okay? So it's the surfaces. It's not airborne for everybody. It's in close, non-ventilated, non-negative pressure areas. Do all COVID-19 patients suffer from breathing problems? Male, no. A lot of patients will have very mild symptoms. Some will have probably a cough and a cold and a runny nose. Some will have, other diseases. And some will have breathing difficulties. Not all. So somebody with this virus just spread out on any surface with just a single touch, would they have to cough on their hands and rub it somewhere around to spread it? Vase, this is a good question. Actually, I like that question. If you notice, in the very beginning of this disease's outbreak, the WHO and the governments and the Ministry of Health took out posters for hand hygiene and cough etiquettes. It's everywhere. You go to any place. I've been to, during this time when the schools were still open, and I went to this one particular school, I won't name it, and I talked to the children there in a hall. This was much before when the schools were closed, but the world was getting a hang of it. We had a very few cases in Oman, almost non-existent. And I talked to these kids, and they were so well informed about hand hygiene. They knew exactly how and when to wash their hands. And when you ask them what cough etiquette is, and they knew exactly how to sneeze, how to cough. A lot of times I have patients coming in, and sometimes there's a language barrier. They will not speak the language I speak, and I don't speak the language they speak. And in order to make me understand, or it's something that they haven't been taught, I ask them what's wrong, and pow, cough on right in my face. It's they do that. They cough on your face. Cough etiquette is you cough like this, or you have a sneeze, you take a handkerchief or a tissue paper and you sneeze on it, and then you discard it, and then you wash your hands. So if somebody doesn't follow this, and I see a lot of people don't, but I've seen kids are so well aware they do, okay, then obviously this can spread really, really bad and fast on surfaces as well, Vasa. Do we have to clean our groceries after reaching home? So let's suppose you got yourself an open pack of cereal, or like a cereal box. I want to ask you how you're going to clean your groceries that way, because there are a lot of surfaces that will not be able to get rid of that touch and everything else. So yeah, you shouldn't be that paranoid, but vegetables, fruits, everything else, they need to be washed anyways. This is something that somebody told me. They're like, what the world is emphasizing now is what I've been doing for the lifetime that I've lived. It's something very, very normal. It's something not unique to wash your groceries, to cough in a particular way, to sneeze in a particular way, to wash your hands after it, and consistently cleaning your hands and not leaving it as it is. These are things which are normal. These are not extraordinary things, right? So Ganesh asked, when we go outside for emergency, do we really need to wear masks? Ganesh, I actually just talked about it. No. Like I said, you do not need to have those masks, but if you're coming into a close contact with a COVID patient, yes, then wear a mask. The cloth masks or the surgical masks will not save you. If you're in close contact with a patient with COVID 19, the masks will not help. The masks are for people who are sick or for the healthcare professionals, not for you. Not for you. It's this reason why almost, if you go to the WHO website, who.int, it says 40 million people, okay, in the healthcare sector are running short of masks and PPE because of people in mass hysteria who have bought all these things out and not needing them. Okay. Mina, if the grocery brought home from stores, how would one handle them? Okay, same question. Do whatever you do normally. Wash your grocery. Like, for example, there are things that are washable. You can wash them, like vegetables, fruits, consumption items. Yes. The other surfaces, like glass surfaces, you can clean them if you want to. That's no problem. Certain things you will not be able to. It hasn't come to that level yet, unless somebody has sneezed directly onto the supermarket aisle. I don't think you should worry. People traveling should be made worn full protective suits, and the crew too, as in China they were wearing after the increase in number. Male, do you have any idea what the cost of PPE is and what you're talking about? People will actually make the PPE short for the people who actually need it. If every single person who was going out on the road wore a complete PPE, okay, protective gear, suits and everything else, everybody else who needs it will run out of it, like me. Okay? So no, it is not the case. The crew that you saw on TV in China wearing protective gear were the people who were directly in contact with these patients, and these suits are not something that can be worn day in and day out. I'm sorry, but you're very, very misinformed. These are basically suits that are during a certain time period with a certain contact patient, and then they're discarded. It's not like you can wash them and wear them again. It doesn't work that way. Okay. Now, till we get some more questions, social distancing and isolation has something called flattening the curve. I'm sure that quite a number of people have heard about it. And what is this flattening of curve? So when a country gets its first case of coronavirus, you will see a slow and a steady number of patients rising slowly. Now, it is at this slow rise that the ministries and the government and everybody else need to make drastic and good and solid decisions and prevent people from mingling too much or going out too much, so that, and for the people to cooperate, so that this curve stays steady like this, goes slightly up and then comes down. Now, countries that will actually not take care and not make social distancing and isolation mandatory, they will have a slow, steady curve and then a sudden upward rise. They will go right up. The numbers will shoot up. Why? Because as we discussed before, one contact can cause a lot of infections. So if you stay home and you practice what the government is asking you, the ministry is asking you, the healthcare workers are asking you, the WHO is asking you, the old people are asking you, then you will not cause the infection to spread rapidly through our society. You look at Italy, you look at Spain, France. When the time for isolation and everything came, they were not quick enough to make that decision. We made that decision much, much before. In a very small number of patients being infected, we made that decision here. We're very lucky that it was asked. that please do this, isolate yourself, do social distancing, hand hygiene, cough etiquettes, only if necessary go out, otherwise stay home. We will come out of it. All the gatherings, barbecue, beach parties, this, that, whatever, all of it will come back. But for the time being, we're asking you to be a part of this fight with us and to actually not go out. It's very simple. Binge watch Netflix. More cases are imported. Only on plane, more cases are imported. Male, yes, travel-related cases are there. If a patient is in a asymptomatic time zone, say for example, it's the first, second, or third day of contracting the virus, okay, they will either have fever or any other symptoms. And that is exactly why all flights everywhere in different countries have shut down, according to the numbers that have come up during their, endemic phase. So you think Oman is not a part of it? Absolutely. Oman is, tomorrow onwards, there are other no flights coming in. There have been so many flights canceled in and out of other cities and countries and so many things. A very timely decision. So yes, even though planes are causing these problems, the decision for that has already come through. What are the methods of isolation in a place where people using single washrooms? Sumaya, excellent question. Wow, I didn't expect somebody to ask that, but it's a very good question. Okay, so there is a complete small booklet or a handout that has been given to every patient that has been asked to be quarantined. The word isolation comes now. Instead of quarantine, we're using the word isolation. Every single patient has been given that. Them to separate themselves from the rest of the family or people in the house. Keep using that house, the linen, the clothes they wear, the bed sheets, the towels, and everything else have to be washed separately. Okay, you isolate that. It is until they get better, which is hopefully praying for everybody very, very soon. And then after a certain time period when they're given the green signal, they can go out. The bathrooms are obviously cleaned in a specific way. And there's one person who is allotted as a close contact for that patient, that you can go give food to them, you can do these things for them, help them out and everything else. And that person, when in contact with them, is given a mask, N95, FFP2, so they are also safe. Coming to the question, what if there's one bathroom? Because there are people who are going to be in isolation. Every single time an infected patient, COVID-19 positive patient, will use the bathroom, it will be cleaned with a special surface that the ministry will tell you. The ministry will tell you this is something that you need to do. In a spray bottle, you can actually use that, the person who's infected, to clean out the area, okay? The washroom. So every single time that'll be done if they use the washroom. So is it possible? It is not recommended, but it is possible. When, shove comes to push, it's something that you can do. Nazim, what have you asked? Doctor, for example, if you go to hypermarket, people are wearing masks. So that's what you mean. Masks and gloves and even the staff. So we don't know who are infected or not. So how can we resolve this? Should we wear masks and gloves there? Okay. I actually have been working on this for the past few days. Patients coming in, I've seen, are wearing gloves. Gloves gives you a feeling of protection, right? You feel that I will save my hands from surfaces which will have these viruses. But inadvertently, what will happen is, Nazim, you're going to touch the gloves onto your face some way or the other. Because you're wearing gloves, you will have no issue because your hands are safe. You will do that. And what will happen is, now let's suppose there was a virus, it's now on you. We do not recommend gloves. We recommend hand washing. Hand washing. Wash your hands. Don't be dirty. Okay? Masks. If the supermarkets have not already done this, because I have been to a few hypermarkets where only one person is allowed in, and there's not too much congestion, and they've even marked the spots. When you stand in a trolley for a checkout, they've even marked the spots. Stay this much of a distance ahead. Don't get into somebody else's private space. Okay, so they've done that as well. So if it is congested, I recommend that you just don't go in there at that time. Wearing gloves and masks will not have any benefit. Okay, avoiding such a situation will. That will benefit you. This session, do you know and able to share how many COVID tests have been done so far in Oman? Oh, the number is quite big actually, Ali. The There is a central public health lab, okay, CPHL, that does the tests. The government has appointed a certain lab, and they will do the tests, okay. And of the number of people that have been quarantined, only a certain with certain criteria have been tested. The number has crossed more than 700, 800, I think 900 maybe. Is rising, but the still offices are working, which is concern, and the number is rising, and especially unidentified personnel having COVID-19. Ganesh. The government has actually requested that 30% of the workforce be present in the office and 70% not be. They should work from home. So although the offices are open, they have taken the measures to decrease the contact. Okay. And plus, there are so many things that you can do in your office space. Say, for example, you can have hand sanitizers at the entrance and exits of the office, hand sanitizers at the exit and entrances of the bathrooms or washrooms, or whatever facilities you have. Whenever you're dealing with a client, keep a 1.5 meter distance. The desk that you work at, clean it up before you. I go to work. The first thing I do before I see my patients is I actually clean up my desk with the fluids and the cleaning material that the ministry has told us to clean it with. Why do I do that? Because it keeps me safe. It keeps me safe. I wash my hands frequently. I even clean my keyboard, my computer's mouse, everything that I need. Touch surfaces, all the material that needs to be used for my patients, everything is cleaned. You can do the same. Okay. Closing down the offices at this point is not going to benefit you. What is it going to benefit you with? If you actually follow the instructions, if you are well informed, Ganesh, that these are the things that save you, then do that. Don't close down the offices. Just follow the practice of hand washing, cough etiquette, okay? Distance. You don't need to talk to somebody in their face, right? Not really recommended. Should we disinfect our clothes or take our shoes outside the house whenever we come back home? Vase, excellent question, man. And you asked it twice for some reason. Okay, but I'll answer it once. We have come across multiple papers which have recommended how and what material to use to clean your clothes. I need to ask you a small question. Do you not wash your clothes every day? The ones that you wear every day, you go out in the dust and the heat, obviously, you wash them. And when you wash them, you use a material. You must have used hypochlorous acid, Clorox or chlor, right? It is the recommended material. So that is the way you disinfect it, okay? That is the best way of disinfecting it. When you have the load of laundry that you're doing, you use that, okay? The colored one is there. The other bleach is there. So yeah, you can do that. Can you leave your shoes outside? Normally, a lot of people recommend that anyways, without this COVID being there. You must have seen a lot of houses having the rule of not bringing the shoes in. A lot of mothers will beat their kids if they bring their shoes in, especially the muddy ones. Yeah? Okay, what are the chances of babies or toddlers contracting the virus? So far, the youngest patient we've had is, I think, 5 years old. 5 years old. I'm not talking about Oman. I'm talking about the world. The paper that I've come across so far, 5-year-old kid. Pediatric cases are there. Newborn and toddler, I have not come across a paper with that. I'll have to ask my pediatrician, Dr. Santosh. He's really well read up on this in the hospital. He's doing quite a remarkable job right now. He's looking at the number of kids that he's looking at and the hard work that he's putting in. I have to give my hats off to him. He's fantastic. He's really, really good with kids. And he's doing what is necessary during this endemic phase in Oman and the pandemic in the world to make sure that the workers, the staff, and the kids and everybody else are safe. Stay home, stay home. Where we can have the COVID-19 test in Muscat and how much the cost is for testing. It's Khanita K. Saunders. Okay, Khanita, it's free. It's absolutely free. Not one paisa. Okay? But it is tested in a specific lab right now that has been appointed by the government, is owned by the government, and you only have to fall in that criteria that needs to be tested. There are 5 million people living in Oman. Not everyone will be tested. And let's suppose, this just doesn't make sense to me, right? Hanita, you need to understand something. Let's suppose you were tested today, and you came out COVID-19 negative. I'm just giving you a hypothetical situation, right? And then you met somebody who had COVID-19. And then you got COVID-19. And then you come with that certificate saying, oh, I was negative. How am I positive now? It doesn't help. The tests will not help for everyone. They will help when you are in that criteria that needs to be tested. Currently, people, the general public in Oman, do not need to be tested. Everyone doesn't need to be tested yet. Okay.
Last questions.
What is the current situation number will rise in coming days? Amina Islam Khan. Okay, Amina, that is something that you can answer better than me, or the general public can. Just like every other country where the numbers rise, Oman is in there too. We're not cut out from the world, right? We're not cut off from everybody else. It just depends on you. If the number will rise, or it will stay static, or it will slow down or go away. If you stay home, if you practice what the government, the Ministry of Health, Oman, is asking you to practice, the number will fall. It will slow down. It will not rise as much as what is happening in other countries. It just depends on you. Depends on every single person that this message gets across to, if they pass this message across to them. You know, a lot of people had this question. I'm sorry, I'm just getting off topic here. Somebody had this question that is 3 people still social distancing? So if I meet my friend who's just like, I know he hasn't traveled, he doesn't have it, his family hasn't traveled, he's safe, can I go see him? Or I'm just meeting 3 people. It's not a big number, is it? Maybe that is good enough for social distancing. How do you know he hasn't gone across somewhere and contacted it from a surface? How do you know that somebody else who is very close to him doesn't have it and he's met this person, and so on and so forth? You can't really say. It doesn't qualify as social distancing. Social distancing or isolation is in the people within your household, your home. People who live in the same home. That's social distancing. We love our friends, we love our family who are living in other houses, our uncles, our aunts, our cousins, everybody. We love everyone. But right now, to show them love, you need to stay home. Okay? Lots of applications out there for video chats. You can do conference calls. You can have Omantel and Ooredoo have come up with free calls, free national calls. If you stay home, you get that. So take advantage of staying in touch. Have some family time. Play some games at home. The number depends on you. It will rise or fall. Some printing presses are still open and running. Is it safe to work during this time, and what can we do about it? Printing for mass public has been abandoned. Those printing presses are being run for poster printing and other things. If it isn't stopped yet, I think you might be in trouble posting this year. How much longer is the pandemic expected to last? Oh, Tamara, it just depends on people. If they follow through, if they actually stay indoors, if China, the epicenter, Wuhan, can overcome it, everybody else can. It just depends if the people are going to listen or not. Okay? So if people listen, they stay home, they're going to be fine. It will come down and then eventually finish sooner. You don't listen and the quarantine, isolation, everything goes much longer. hypertension, a little heaviness in chest, followed by leg discomfort and fever. What is the next step to be taken? Having toddlers at home, shall see doctor. Okay, Sumaya, the ministry had, if you actually go to the Royal Hospital, or say, for example, Khola or Nahda or Sultan Qaboos, they have discontinued all non-emergency patients. They're not seeing any of these patients, which are regular follow-ups for hypertension, diabetes. But in case of an emergency, they'll tell you, go to the hospital like any other day. You see, a lot of people use this in the times when coronavirus was not there, that they would come in for the smallest of things. It is already not recommended to do that. Okay? So just because you were doing it then, okay, that there was no particular problem, mild here and there, and then you would show up to the hospital, that is something that shouldn't be done then and shouldn't be done now. But yes, if you're having heaviness in chest followed by leg discomfort, this, that, fever, go see some practitioner over there. If it's something that is causing discomfort, is problematic, go see a doctor. You can come to us. You said the test kit screening is free if you are tested positive and was advised to be hospitalized. Would the hospitalization be free as well? Is the hospitalization free as well? I don't think for expatriates is free in any case, but I don't know what their instructions on that will be now. So far, we haven't heard anything like that, so we're not sure if the hospitalization will. Obviously, when you get hospitalized, there's a lot of equipment used, a lot of things done. There are so many things going on. I'm not sure what the government's directive on that is, what the government institutions will be doing, but the private ones are charging. Whether he has already come and told to close the gates and work inside the printing press. Is it safe? If you have a small workforce with enough distance, it's safe. If you get into each other's face, it's not safe. All right, everyone. So I think we've covered most of the questions that people have had. It has been a pleasure informing you. Again, I work with NMC Specialty Hospital Rui. If there are any more questions, you can always come and see me. We're trying to arrange some other things for in the hospital to help out the patients who will or will not be able to come to the hospital. There's so much work being done by the hospital to safeguard its patient, to get the best healthcare out, to help out everybody in the best way possible. Okay, so I'm just glad that we're here to help you out. Now you just need to help us out. We have families and friends too. We don't have the liberty of staying home and chilling and watching Netflix. We will be out there to keep you safe. You stay indoors to keep us safe. Take care and God bless.